welcome to Let's Talk Boundaries. Today, we're going to be talking about communication at the core. And not only communication, but setting healthy boundaries through communication at the core. Or here's another way to put it: setting healthy boundaries in your relationships at the core. All right. So a lot of times people want to have communication as part of having a strong relationship. It could be with a spouse. It could be with a family member. It could be with a friend. It could even be with a business partner. The bottom line is you want to make sure that your communication is strong. And oftentimes our communication may require crucial conversations. And crucial conversations means that we have prepared ourselves for a conversation. And so I wanted to share with you an acronym I created as far as helping you to set healthy boundaries at the core when it comes to communicating with people that you have relationships with, so that you can get the outcome that is warranted for that communication. So the acronym I came up with is C.O.R.E, C-O-R-E. And what Tyrone and I are going to be doing today is we're going to be explaining what that means in order to help you to have effective communication and to make sure that you are communicating your healthy boundaries in the process. So again, I indicated this acronym C-O-R-E at the core. One of the things that Tyrone talked about, and I definitely want to stress, is that oftentimes if we do not prepare for a conversation, a needed conversation, a crucial conversation that must be had in order to salvage a relationship or improve a relationship, then most chances are it's going to be based on our emotions. And so in order to increase your level of emotional intelligence and to get the outcome that you are striving to achieve in a conversation, this is where these core boundaries are going to be key. C-O-R-E. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let's say you have to have a conversation, right? And you've already prepared for the conversation. Part of your internal boundaries is that preparation. So the C of core in your internal boundary is to ask yourself the question, what is my reality? What is my reality in this situation, so that I can know how I'm going to present myself and what I'm looking to get out of this conversation. Now, when you look at that on the other side, which is the external boundary, you're considering the other person that you're going to establish that healthy boundary with. So while on the internal side, internal boundary, you're establishing your reality, on the external side, you want to consider the other person's reality, because they're not the same. The way that you see it, it can be totally different than the way that they see it. So when you consider that in both the internal and the external being your reality and their reality, it helps you to make the conversation go much more smoother. So the next one we have, Tyrone, is the O. So talk a little bit about owning the outcome when it comes to your internal boundary.
And that's a good thing. So let's look at those things. When you look at the core, and we have to deal in our relationship as husband and wife to make sure that we are straight, because if the house is not straight, the outside is not going to be straight. And so when you look at the O part, owning the outcome or owning your outcome of it, is that you set the reality. You have to understand both sides of the reality. What it is that I am saying to her, what is she hearing? Coming back to form that reality. So where is her reality coming from all the obstacles that are in her life, and where am I thinking that she may or may not understand? And so when you own the outcome of it is that now, since you looked at the realities, your internal boundary says that I am prepared for this conversation, and I am prepared for the A or the F, which outcome it is. And if you look at, and since you established that up front, if the outcome is not the way you had intended it to go early on in the conversation, that's probably a point where you can go, opt out of it, which is the external boundary, to say, you know what, maybe now is not the right time. How about we just table this, give ourselves the time to think about what we're doing and what we want to talk about, and then let's come back to it. Time is a great friend of yours when you use it the right way.
Oh, that is so good, Tyrone. I'm glad you said that because a lot of times you may own the outcome, but the way that it comes across may be causing that person to react emotionally. And if it seems like it's getting out of control, opt out. Just set that boundary right there, like Tyrone said. And then the next part of this acronym of CORE is the R. And that is an internal side is to refuse to blame others. Isn't it interesting whenever we get into a heated conversation with someone that there's always the desire or we feel the need to blame someone else as to why we are in the predicament that we're in. So when you make it a point in your preparation that you are going to refuse to blame others, it puts you in a position of openness so that you can receive whatever the other person is saying. So that's your internal boundary for the R in the core. The external boundary is to always remember your why. A lot of times a conversation can get heated, it can try to go in a different direction. But if you go back to remembering your why was I having this conversation in the first place? What did I want my outcome to look like? And what is my reality? Let's not ever forget our reality in a crucial conversation. And then last but definitely not least is the E in the core. And for the internal boundary, that's to eliminate filters. Now you may say, what's a filter? A filter is what we also consider a trigger. A filter is something that is triggered whenever you receive a comment or a response or reaction that brings you back to a previous situation where you may experience that and it wasn't pleasant. So for example, for a filter, maybe someone may say, and I know Tyrone and I go through this a lot because of a filter that I have to be mindful of. A lot of times Tyrone will say to me when I make a mistake is, oh, you didn't see that, did you? Or you didn't think about that, did you? And to me, that's a filter because in the past, I was always criticized and condemned when I made a bad choice. And so now when he says it, he doesn't mean it as far as being critical. He's just asking me. And I have a tendency to allow that filter to be a trigger for lashing out or reacting in a way that's not healthy. So can you identify any of the triggers that you have or any of the filters that you may have in place that will affect what your outcome or your response is going to be? So that's something you want to think about. That's an internal boundary. And then that last external side of that for core is to establish healthy boundaries. So in the situation with Tyrone where I might experience that filter and it triggers me, I then make sure that I communicate, all right, that's something that I would appreciate if we didn't go to when it comes to a conversation. Alrighty. And another thing I will say to him is another example of setting a healthy boundary in a conversation, because couples always want to say, oh, you never do that, or you always do that, right? Make sure you establish that healthy boundary and you communicate is, I would prefer that we do not use these two words ever, never, and always. When you can communicate that boundary, then you've assured that the conversation moving forward, if it's going to go on forward, if they accept that healthy boundary and they respect that healthy boundary, then you're more likely to get a healthier outcome based on the core that you've established through your internal boundaries.
And that's good. And so even when you look at those, when someone has established that for themselves because they have triggers, you have to make sure that once you understand those triggers, that you establish a boundary in yourself so that I may not want to use those type triggers until they can work through it and you can talk to it. And even if it does happen or come up, you establish those boundaries ahead of time to where you can work those things out and get to it. It is a great tool in terms of core that you use for couples and in terms of building great relationships. And so don't be afraid to use it because it really works.
It sure does. And so there, to summarize, in order to have effective communication, it begins at the core. When you want to set healthy boundaries, think about CORE, C-O-R-E. And remember, there are internal core boundaries and there are external core boundaries to consider. So Tyrone, based on this conversation, which is your favorite part of the CORE acronym?
Wow, that's a good thing to say. I think my favorite part is, I think, the beginning, when you understand your reality versus their reality. To me, that's a great thing, because my reality is coming from a different point of view. And if you don't get the first part right, you're way off target. So I think just understanding the reality of what I am saying, what they are hearing me saying, to make sure that we understand. And sometimes that might be asking a question to get clarification of whose reality are you thinking from.
Absolutely. My favorite part is the opt out. Opt out in the external boundary side is gives me an opportunity in case I may get emotional and heated and want to react versus respond. I get an opportunity to say, you know what, hold up, time out. Let's step back, let's table this, and let's come back at a different time. Because oftentimes the person you're having that conversation with, they were not prepared for it. So be prepared to opt out and give them an opportunity to choose when they want to continue that conversation.
Awesome. Guys, I hope you use this tool. It works.
And so put in the comments which part of the CORE acronym do you think is most important for you or most helpful for you when it comes to setting healthy boundaries at the core.
And if you need a written part of this thing for your understanding of it, please give us a shout and we'll get it to you.
That's right. Go ahead and put it in the comments below, and we'd love to be able to send it to you. So we are Tyrone and Pam Bird, and let's talk boundaries. Be sure to be a part of our Facebook group. It's a group that we have where we get a chance to talk about boundaries. And if you got a particular area of a boundary that you would like to set and not sure how to do that, go ahead and leave it in the comment or send us a private message. We will go ahead and make sure we answer it for you, or we can discuss it in another one of our videos, anonymous if you choose. Alrighty, again, this is Pam and Tyrone Bird, and let's talk boundaries. Take care, and God bless.